everyone. Welcome to an episode of Doctor Who Are You? It's just a little something that I started recently. Here today we have Matt and Hannah. So Matt and Hannah, can you guys introduce yourselves?
Sure. My name is Matt Bergendahl. I'm a licensed counselor. I currently work at Stack Up, the nonprofit organization. Without going into too much detail, basically, we work with veterans and civilians alike. We try to promote mental health advocacy. We want to try and provide assistance to veterans and civilians as well with our STOP program, which is the Stack Up Overwatch program, where we provide peer-to-peer support interventions 24/7 on Discord, and it's been a really interesting community we've been able to work with. I've been a clinician since 2015, and I've worked with the VA. It's been a really interesting ride, and I'm thankful for being able to work with Stack Up, because that's how I was able to meet you two.
Yay!
Yeah.
Hi, and I'm Hannah Stiller. I have a background in clinical working with trauma and crisis. I have mostly my experience in the clinical setting has been working with at-risk youth. However, what I decided to do is I decided to go back and get my doctorate, so a PsyD, doctorate in psychology, and that kind of just means that I could really focus on the clinical. So instead I started going to school, focusing there, but then doing some other projects, which includes blogging, and I also am a co-host of a stream that Matt and I do called SciStream. It's super awesome. It's pretty much just an educational show that we talk about different topics of mental health. So we've done topics in the past, have included things like self-care. We did a show on suicide awareness, and with the last 2 months being mental health awareness and PTSD awareness, we've been focusing a lot on post-traumatic stress disorder, trauma, what those look like, how to take care of yourself, how to take care of others. We have an upcoming stream that's actually going to be covering stigma and support. We asked the people that follow us to give us some feedback of what they would like to see, and that's what they said. So in addition to school, which is pretty much my full-time job, I write blogs about mental health and then do the streams about mental health. And then I'm going to be starting my own videos that are going to correspond with my blog. I've been saying this for a while, so I'm actually going to start that this month as well. So that's kind of a little bit about me. So yeah, I have some different experience with not only clinical, a lot of schooling, and then a lot of now social media and more educational background as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, Hannah handles the social media part, and
yes.
I tell you what, she works miracles, because I still, maybe I'm just too old, no, that's a poor excuse. Basically, I'm not very good at it, but she is a wizard at handling all that stuff, and
up
really
to 13 accounts between all my different projects.
Oh,
really,
wow.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
We've had some tremendous growth in followers. Like on Twitter, it's just amazing. I check in there just about once a day. I'm like, wow, we gain more people. This is amazing.
That's awesome. Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, you're really killing it with the social media, Hannah, because I would watch. I'm on Facebook a lot. It doesn't seem like it because I'm lurking now. And I don't post as much. I don't know why. But I always see something every day, and it's so awesome.
I try. So I've got my own project with Serene Life Consulting, where I do public speaking, and that's where my blogs are, and that's where my own videos are going to be linked to. And then we have SciStream, which is both Matt and my project. And so between the two of them, I try to always make sure I'm keeping everything integrated. So if you want, actually, I'm not even going to ask you. I'm going to send you the links.
Yes, please.
Everything we have, so that when we're done with the video, maybe we can get some of those links up there. That'd be awesome.
For sure. We'll put them in the comments on the description section in the bottom. Yeah. So, so how it works with Doctor Who Are You is that in commemoration of every doctor, there's 13 questions. And so you choose a number between 1 to 13, and you answer the corresponding question. Sounds good?
Sounds good.
Okay, so pick a number between 1 to 13.
I'll pick number 7.
Number 7.
I was gonna pick number 7 too.
If you could be any video game character, who
Hold
would
on,
it be?
hold on 1 second.
Okay.
My cat has decided that my headphones are now a playing device. So, okay, we're plugged back in. I totally lost you, whatever you were saying, because they just pulled out my headphones. Continue.
No worries, no worries. So if you could be any video game character, who would it be?
Hannah, you want to take this one first?
No, you need to take this one first because it's hard.
That is a tough one.
Yeah. Video game character. That's like
Yeah, right.
genre you could have asked, and I would have had like an answer instantly. But video games, that one's a tough one.
I would have to say, it's funny because there's so much to choose from. Honestly, I'm gonna have to go back to probably my favorite video game is Skyrim, and the main character, and I'm gonna probably butcher the name. My kids are always correcting me on the correct pronunciation. The Dovahkiin.
Dovahkiin?
There you go. And the reason why I would pick that one is just the sheer love for the environment, what that person was able to do in terms of, he was on the chopping block to get his head removed or her head removed, depending on who you choose. And they went from, having a pretty rough go in the start to, being able to communicate and be part of, dragons. I mean, that's pretty cool. And but it's not just that, it's just the hero's journey, I guess you can put it. Being able to have the freedom of choice in what you want to do, of course the consequences of those actions, that they happen to be something a little shady that you do. All of those things I found to be quite refreshing, as opposed to a more of a linear type video game. And I sunk so many hours. I mean, I literally, we'll put it this way. When I was going through my master's program, I deliberately had to uninstall that game because I knew that if I were to play it while trying to do my studies, well, one of them was going to suffer, and it probably would have been my education. And so obviously, I really had a passion for the game, the music, the graphics, and the person that you play as well.
Good answer. So full disclosure on my side is I don't play video games. At least not ones that are story based. Everything I do is always that like RPG style, or I love fighting games. I have to admit, things like Soul Calibur are just absolutely amazing to me. But I don't play anything that has any story based other than Kingdom Hearts. So this is a really hard question for me. So because everything I do is like World of Warcraft, things like that. So I don't actually know if I have an answer for that. So I'm like a little embarrassed over here.
I think it's okay if you don't have an answer, because it sounds like you do if it was broader.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like everything else. Like if you're talking about literally almost any other genre, I would have an answer. But yeah, video games. I was never raised being allowed to play video games. So it was to the point where if my cousins were playing, I was actually told I had to leave.
Oh, wow.
By my mom. She did not want me even around video games. And so my cousin used to take his Game Boy, this is the old, gray brick, and he would put it under my grandparents' bed. And I would go in there and I'd sneak in and I'd get to play. But the only game he would let out of his sight was Super Mario. So Super Mario was the only game I ever had any sort of experience with until I got married. And when my husband and I got married, World of Warcraft was literally that day, like the day before, the day after a wedding, was going into beta. And I knew that that was it. Like I was going to just completely lose him. And so we created a bunch of characters and said, hey, what one do you want so we can do this together? And I loved the mage because the mage was, sorry, I keep saying mage. No, mage. I was right that time. I keep saying mage, I usually say. So mage. The mage was so cool because it polymorphed. And so I was sitting there for like 5 minutes straight going, it's a cow, but it's a sheep, but it's a cow, but it's a sheep. And I absolutely fell in love with that. And so I started playing that character, and I realized recently there was a poll that I was talking to another therapist. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about other people. So Janina Scarlett, she put up a poll about talking about World of Warcraft. And it was, hey, do you play? If so, do you feel that you and your character have similarities? And I started kind of analyzing my character, and I realized that by playing this mage, I loved Frostspec. And in Frostspec, you could kind of put yourself in a little ice cave. I'm trying not to use the terms in the game because I don't know if people know them. And then you could frost snow, you could cone a cold, you could do all these things that like slow down people around you. You had the ability to kind of protect yourself. And then you were very utility. You know, you create food, you create portals, you're very helpful. And I started kind of analyzing this character and realizing that by picking this character, it really was very similar to myself as far as my play style and kind of my personality of wanting to be self-sufficient and wanting to help people at the same time. And I may not be the best damage dealer, but I can hold my own. And so I guess that's about the best way I can answer that question. I don't know if I'd want to be my character in that game. I'd say if I feel that character really...
You relate to them.
Yeah, I feel it really embodies me, who I am, so.
Well, I think that sounds like a great answer.
Of course, warlocks are better, but you know, that's a different story.
Oh, don't even get me started on warlocks. At least you didn't say hunter. Oh, hunters are the bane of my existence. They break my sheeps, and I do not like them.
Oh.
Yeah, really excited. They're bringing back vanilla, so I'll be picking up again and doing more raiding in the next starting in August. So.
Oh yeah, I'm glad I got you guys before the vanilla comes out.
Yeah, I'm gonna be like away from. I'm like trying to squeeze all these games in to finish them up or at least try them out, because when Classic comes back, I'm head first.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm actually starting my statistics class, which is my hardest subject. The only class I've ever failed in my undergrad, and then the only class I ever got a B in my grad program. So I'm really nervous about that, and so August and September are going to be focusing on statistics. So I'm like, oh no, this is the worst timing.
Oh no.
So, yeah, we'll see how it goes.
So pick another number.
I'm gonna go with 5.
With 5? Ooh, this one's a broad one. What is the worst part of your job?
You go first, Hannah. I went first last time.
Oh gosh, see, the worst part of my job, I think, is part of me wants to say the pay right now, because as starting out, we're not being monetized at the moment, and so it's really hard to get kind of that I don't know, the motivation sometimes to be like, oh, this is for a reason. You know, when you're getting paid, you know, okay, I got to get up, I got to go work that day. And so part of me really wants to say that, but I actually have a better answer. And I think that the thing that's probably the hardest for me and the worst part is the frustration with the lack of support that I get from friends and family. And it's because people in the industry, they don't get it. People not in the industry, they don't get it. They don't get how important it is. And so doing all of this and then seeing people on my social media from my friends, my family, not our fans and people who follow us, you guys are great. But the people that are specifically from friends and family, a lot of our inspiration, and this is something Matt and I have talked about extensively in the past, just whining to each other about how frustrated we are, because a lot of our inspiration doesn't come from our community. As far as like our followers, our inspiration typically comes from what we see going on within our families and within our friends. oh, we know somebody is struggling with a friend who is suicidal. Okay, we're going to really focus on doing a suicidal episode. We see somebody who is struggling with grief, and so I write a blog very focused towards grief. And so the worst part of my job is to have this information out there and watch people not take it. I actually had a friend of mine who gave me advice. I have another friend whose mother is dying of cancer. It's a very tragic situation. And another friend came to me and said, oh, you know, just make sure you're telling her that, you know, she's going to go to a better place and, you know, her suffering will be over, and like all these cliches that people say. But if you work in mental health or you've ever been through grief at all, you know those are literally the worst things to say. And I had actually covered this in, I think, 3 different blogs. Literally, I have 3 blogs focused on grief, and they all go back to hitting those bullet points of do not say these things. These are the worst things you can say. And here she is telling me the worst advice that I have, you know, covered, yet she had claimed that she had read all my blogs. And so that's kind of the worst part is putting all this stuff out there and not having it be appreciated by the people that we are trying to help the most. Again, we are always trying to help those who are following us and who are watching us, but where a lot of our inspiration comes from the people that are actually close to us. And so not having that connection with them, it can make you almost just not want to do it some days. There's days that I've had to talk to Matt and say, I don't know. I'm just so frustrated right now. And he says, yeah, but we're not doing it for them. You know, we're doing it for the people that are going to, you know, tune in to Sci Streams. They're going to comment and they're going to get something. And there's been days I've had to do the same to him. He's like, that's it, I'm done. And I'm just like, hey, yeah, we got to do it though. You know, people are going to get something. So yeah, that's, I think, probably the worst part.
You know, and to piggyback on that, and one thing that it's so, Hannah, I appreciate you bring that up. Right before this video session that we're doing, I was explaining to my father what PTSD is. And my father's actually a Navy veteran. He served in the Navy during Vietnam. And, you know, thankfully his experiences were a lot more positive compared to my experiences when I was in the Iraq War. And so I was explaining to him, you know, it was interesting because he without getting too much into the backstory, you know, I was, you know, as you two know, I was fighting, you know, leukemia last year, and I had to spend a few months living at a hotel, and he was my caretaker. And he said, son, you know, I didn't see any of these symptoms when you were when we were living in the hotel. And I finally had to just kind of break it down for him, Barney style, like, okay, Dad, this part was the hypervigilance, this part was this part was this. And it made me realize that even though all of my family knows what I do and the type of business that I'm in, that I hold a license, they still don't quite add into the whole understanding of mental health, because if they were like you, if they were watching any of these videos, if they watched any of the content that you pushed out, Hannah, on our social media stream, they would have a little bit more of an understanding. And it's not that I'm disappointed or something like that. There certainly is a lot of frustration there, because it's like I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for the audience as a whole. But to me, it seems like there would be more of an invested interest, because they know that my dad knows that I have PTSD from the stuff that happened to me in Iraq. So if this little nugget of information was being passed along by your own son and by your co-host, who's very knowledgeable on the topic, you know, it might be a good idea to check it out, but you know, it just doesn't happen. So yeah, her and I kind of have this volleyball of frustration that we're passing to each other. Like, we just got to keep pressing on, because at the end of the day, the message is being pushed out there, and people are recognizing the value of what we're doing and the services that we're providing. And so that is the encouragement for me that helps keeps me going. And eventually, developing, because this is a business. You know, the side stream is obviously a community program. It's this community outlet, but it's also a business. And so we have to strategize. How can we, you know, maybe someday, you know, help us pay bills or help us do this? And so I feel that you know, is trying to bring it all together and try to make it as smooth as possible. And it's just not always there. So, yeah.
I like to joke that my dad, I don't even think actually knows I have a stream.
At least my dad knows that. He does know what's out there.
Oh, he also denies he has no clue I have PTSD or anything, but at least he is finally getting on the ball with therapy. So he's kind of like, hey, do you know these mental health professionals? They really know something. I'm like, you do know that's what I do, right? He goes, really? Yes, Dad, I have a master's degree in it, and I'm in school for a doctorate. Yes, that's what I do. Wait, really?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Great answers, you guys. So pick another number.
Number 3.
Number 3. What's your favorite part of your job?
That's a good follow-up.
Yeah, very good thought. I would say really just engaging with people. I mean, although I'm an introvert and all that good stuff, I really enjoy communicating with people one-on-one. It's funny, if you were to watch one of my streams when I was just streaming a video game, I'm pretty laid back. But when we start these side streams, I get really excited because I still have a very huge passion for the topic, and I love discussing the agenda and going into even like the neuropsych of PTSD and talking about how memory is formed and you know, all that, the myelin sheaths of the neuros and all that stuff. Anyhow, I'm getting lost into it, but I really get excited talking about it, and I really enjoy watching the stop program that I run, watching these volunteers who have not all of them, many of the stop staff really do not have a clinical background, and watching them develop their chops, so to speak, because you know, through the training, through the interactions, through those cathartic moments, and seeing them recognizing that this stuff really is helping people out. And you know, at the end of the day, you know, I might not be directly saving someone's life if we're gonna, you know, go down that route, but the work that we're doing as a whole is saving people's lives, you know, either through the side streams or through the stop program or through the panels that I sit on, you know, all these things, you know, and so that really I really enjoy doing that.
Awesome.
I think we're actually going to be somewhat on the same page with this one as well. So a year ago, this is not what I had planned I would be doing with my life at all. A lot of things changed over the last year. I never had a desire to be on camera. I'm still getting used to this. It's why I pushed back my own content videos so much, is because I do fine when I'm talking to Matt, but like, put me in front of a camera by myself, I get super nervous. I do public speaking, I do all that. I have zero anxiety when it comes to being in front of a crowd, but for some reason, me alone in a room with a camera scares the crap out of me. It's just a weird thing. And so, but the reason I do it is because I love the aha moments. The aha moments are the things that I live for. And this is something that I used to work in a high school. I used to tutor, and I was the head of a tutoring department at the school. And I worked with a lot of college-bound students, so a lot of AP classes, and I was pretty much the person that did all of the social sciences. So I was history, psychology, all of those APs. And the aha moments, even in that job, is really what I lived for. I loved it when all of a sudden the student would go, hey, so you're telling me that World War I and World War II are actually connected because the Treaty of Versailles is the thing that then caused Germany, and they start to all of a sudden put all these pieces together, and they go, oh, that's awesome. And so when we're doing a stream, I love that, you know, I get very distracted by our chat. It's something I'm not used to yet. And so I frequently am like going, I'm sorry, I have no clue what I'm saying because I'm reading this. And what's great is I see on our chat those aha moments happening. I see the people just say, so wait, and they'll ask a question that it means that the question they asked means that they were, that they were obviously following what we were saying. Or I'll see somebody post something later on, or I'll get a private message of, hey, I love how you said this. I never thought of it that way. I take a lot of our content, and the reason I take a lot of our content, and you'll notice that I make a lot of memes if you're on my Facebook. And the reason I make a lot of memes is because people don't read or watch our stuff. So by making a meme, at least we're getting some of the key points out there to those who are not going to otherwise engage. And we get a lot of comments on that, a lot of sharing on stuff like that, of people going, wait a minute, that's something that I get now. And, you know, as far as what my goals are for the world and what I want to do, it's not about changing the world. I don't want to change the world. I don't want to be the person who is like up there, you know, signing petitions and getting all these things done. But what I want to do is I want to inspire those who will or who can. And so my big thing is I just want to make sure that everything I'm doing is focused on getting to those people that we're talking to and having them say, hey, yeah, now I get it. Now I can get help. Now I do understand. And then they will then move on, and they will then change the world themselves as well.
That's awesome. The last one I want to ask you guys is, if there is something else you wanted to do, what would it be?
Okay, I already know this one. So, teaching. So teaching is my love, it's my passion. Working in the clinical setting is great, and working with mental health. But again, it really for me comes back down to the aha moments. And so teaching is something that I would love to do, and I'd love to start doing public speaking and panels and just being more engaging with an audience. I love the stream, I love my blog, but it's very isolated. It's just kind of me on one side and them on the other side. And I feel that with like teaching and stuff like that, it's something that I really have kind of a passion for in all areas. It doesn't even have to be psychology related. It could be, you know, child development. It could be any of those sorts of things. I just absolutely love the teaching environment and being able to engage with the classroom and get that kind of feedback going between me and the audience or the students or the whoever that I'm speaking for. So I think if I didn't do the mental health focus, I would probably be a teacher. Ironically, back in high school, when you take those aptitude tests, they actually came up with all of my stuff was pretty much came down to teacher and counselor. So I feel like, you know, maybe in the future that's something I would like to do more of. If I was going to go for just a vanity crazy, I'd love to be an event planner. I think I could be a great event planner. So that's if I was completely getting out of the world, I'd probably do something like that, event planning and stuff. But it's hard to even imagine me not doing something that at least relates to mental health. And so teaching, speaking, writing, I'd love to write a book someday. So, you know, just besides the streams and the blogging, I'd like to kind of get into more bigger projects.
You can definitely do both, because you can be an adjunct. You can be an adjunct professor and teach while you're still doing your clinical work, and a little bit of everything.
Yeah, that's what I'm like starting to look into. I thought about it, and it's school right now is just too much. But once I get through school, I mean, then I'll have a doctorate. And come on, who doesn't want a doctorate when you're, you know, a teacher? So yeah, it's kind of it all seems to be building on each other. Some of the stuff wasn't planned. Some of these things I probably will do in the future. Again, like writing and all that, I feel like writing is kind of going to segue from the blogging, and the public speaking is kind of going to segue from the, you know, the streaming, and then teaching is just probably going to start falling into the mix as well. So, and then clinical, honestly, I don't even know if I'll ever pursue clinical with all the other projects. I might end up just doing all that. We'll see.
Awesome.
So, of course, I've always had an interest in teaching as well on the college level. You know, and I remember one of my old professors, he said that it keeps them young, you know, because you're constantly engaging with the younger workforce, and you are looking at new approaches to mental health. Of course, everyone should be doing the same thing anyways, but I would imagine someone who's a professor is on the kind of the fringe of what's out there, which is really cool. Of course, having that would be great. In fact, I did at one point put in for some positions before I had moved up here to Washington. But aside from that, what I see, maybe it's my military background. I don't know how I can pinpoint it, but one thing, and Hannah knows this, one thing that I would like to develop is a network. If we take a look at the clinical setting at the local level of a city, it's mostly fragmented. People hanging up a shingle, renting out a room. They're all by themselves. But if you're lucky, you can get into an agency, right? And sometimes that agency can be a really large large group like the Kaiser Group or Kaiser Permanente or whatever. And what I would like to do in the virtual sense is to create a unified, if possible, a unified network of mental health professionals. And I'm talking about a very wide array, all the way from, your run-of-the-mill, boots on the ground advocate, all the way up to researchers, and have it all unified so that rather than, I really think there's strength in numbers, and I think that if I can unify or see this happen in this community, we can be more ready and more, I guess, what is the best way to put it? We would be putting our best foot forward in terms of being able to tackle these issues. For example, the other